What's going on, YouTube? It is Trev. All right, so I want to talk about this article that came out, and let me bring you to it. And I'm not going to read this whole article because it is a 9-minute read, and between reading it and my commentary, we'll be here for an hour. So I'm going to let you read it yourself. You can find it on Decrypt.co, and the title of it is Terra may be at risk again, but this time is different. Or you can look up, Jacob Gadikian and Lunkdow and all these guys are posting it on Twitter, and it can be found there as well, the link. So I just want to give you a kind of my brief synopsis. Hold on a second. Of my perspective on this article, right? And understand, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I say this to you all the time, and I mean it. I can give you my opinion and my perspective. I do not expect anybody to adopt that just because it's what I said, all right? There are multiple perspectives on this situation, and some of them are diametrically opposed. I encourage everyone to do as much research as you can. Listen to what I say, listen to what other people say, read up on it yourself. Actually jump in and do the work before you adopt a philosophy or a perspective on it. If you are just, basically adopting, somebody else's perspective, you're not doing yourself any good. You're not doing anybody else any good. I am not a financial advisor, not financial advice. This is simply the way I look at it. All right. So I can tell you that I don't see anything new here in this article. I don't see anything damning. I don't see anything groundbreaking. I don't see anything new being brought to light that we haven't already gone over a million times. As a matter of fact, I see it as just perpetuating something that might have been dying off a little bit. This whole story about Allnodes. And listen, there's a lot of truth to these claims, okay? If you hold more than a third of the voting power on any chain, you can basically do a lot of things to that chain, okay? You can halt the chain. You can pass proposals on your own. There's a lot of things that you can do, right? And so there was concern that Allnodes was maybe over that 1/3 voting power between their validator and the validator nodes that they host, right? Nobody was able to ever prove those numbers. That number 40% was thrown out a lot, right? That number's kind of gotten, I don't know. That number's off somewhere. Nobody's saying that one anymore because ultimately there's no way to prove it. And Allnodes themselves has claimed somewhere around 30 or 31%, and then they've taken some steps to try to actually get people to undelegate from them because they don't want to get up above that spot. It'll put a target on their backs, right? Even more so maybe than there already is. And they do realize that anybody with that kind of voting power, could put things in a precarious position, right? They don't want to be there. So they've done some things. And I think now they're claiming that they're somewhere down around 29% between, again, their validator and nodes that they host, right? So you're going to see some quotes. And I expect you to read this on your own. Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing. But there are going to be some quotes in here from people that maybe we haven't heard of yet. And take those with a grain of salt too. Because you don't have the entire interview. You only have little sentences or snippets from some interview that was held somewhere and put into this particular structure. And when you do that, you can very easily form a narrative, right? That may be out of context of what was actually said. So I don't know that that's what happened, but just be aware of that, right? I think we're all aware of that anyway. All right. I just want to zip through a few things here. So when you read this, like everything else, the perspective you're going to have may have already been formed, right? You may already think that, Lunk sucks and Allnodes sucks and, whatever. You might already think that. So when you read this, you're going to be like, oh yeah, see, there it is right there. Right? That's what you're going to get. If you don't believe that, if you believe that Allnodes is trustworthy and Lunk is on a great path, you might read this and get a totally other perspective from it. For me, I'm just going to give you the perspective I have, right? So there are a couple key things in here that I picked out, and the way I read them from my perspective leads me to believe that there is a certain agenda here with this article. Even though I can say it does take some steps to come off kind of as impartial, right? It takes steps to appear that way. But then when you look at certain phrases and certain words that are used, and maybe I'm nitpicking, right? But this is what I do all the time. When you look at that, you start to see where there is a subliminal message being relayed here and trying to put these images in your head subtly where you may not really catch them, right? Well, I caught some of them, right? And that's the way it seems to me. Anyway, all right, so I'm going to start like over here. And it talks about, okay, the 60 billion implosion of Terra ecosystem last May exposed cracks in the foundation of crypto industry and kickstarted a year of cascading financial crisis that have yet to relent, okay? And this paragraph down here kind of struck me, right? It says Terra Classic is often referred to as a meme chain, meaning it isn't taken all that seriously by the wider crypto community. The network was resuscitated by Terra community members more out of a spirit of experimental novelty than an earnest ambition to reestablish the failed behemoth architected by current international fugitive Do Kwon. There is a lot of suggestive imagery in this paragraph to me, right? Meme chain. It's trying to tell you that everybody else out there considers Luna Classic a joke, and some people do, right? Absolutely, some people do. Does the majority? It's kind of what it maybe suggests, right? The network was resuscitated by members more out of a spirit of experimental novelty, like, hey, let's play with this. Let's just see what we can do, right? As opposed to an earnest ambition to reestablish anything, right? Well, I can tell you that starting with the Terra Rebels, who did everything on a volunteer basis, didn't get paid for it. We've already talked much about how their personal lives and their work lives and everything else suffered for the amount of time that they actually put into this. And so to suggest that the people who tried to recover this just did it as a novelty, not for any serious reason or anything, is really, really doing an injustice, being very disrespectful to those who have really put their heart and soul into trying to revive this thing, and is painting an image in your head that this was never really meant to be anything but a play toy anyway, right? And then, talking about the international fugitive Do Kwon. Absolutely. I think that there are still warrants out for Do Kwon. But, we're trying to tie, this feels like this is like trying to tie it back to him and he's got legal problems anyway. And this is all part of that. The imagery, right? You need to be aware of, you really do. And again, my opinion. All right. But it's, to their credit, right? To a bit, they do point out, and this is the thing where they're trying to make themselves seem impartial, but the wording here is nowhere near as blunt as the wording in that first paragraph, right? Despite that modest ethos, though, Terra Classic is financially speaking no laughing matter. Lunk's market cap currently hovers around 1 billion, and the cryptocurrency routinely clears 100 million in daily trading volume, according to CoinGecko. Okay, little blurb in there to show that they're not partial in any way, right? But those things are absolutely true and should actually get a lot more emphasis than maybe what they actually got, because it is clear for anyone who is invested in Terra Classic that we're not here just to play around, okay? It's always recommended never invest more than you can afford to lose, But we're hoping for great things out of this, and I think that we're seeing progress, even though there are some who seem to want to be trying to pull it back. All right. And again, you can read through this all if you want. It talks about how pretty much all of the node hosting companies, organizations, kind of jumped ship when the depeg happened, and Terra, kind of wasn't looking all that great. Everybody but Allnodes. And again, if you read the way this is spun, it makes it seem like Allnodes maybe is there out of greed and they're just capitalizing on something. But again, if you look at it from another perspective, before we knew anything that there was going to be a Terra Classic, right? Do Kwon put out a poll to the community saying that he wanted to fork. The community overwhelmingly said, no, we don't want that. Fix it. That's what we want, right? He reportedly, whatever influence was used to get the validators that were current to vote his way, he moved forward on the fork anyway. Allnodes said no. That's not what the community wants. They're clear about it. That's not what they want. We're not voting for this fork. We're staying with the community. Again, this was before we knew anything about Terra Classic or Lunk or a revitalization. They stood with the community, okay? And now, I think, are maybe the only node hosting company out there right now in the Luna Classic community, right? And it's extremely helpful because we know that the more validators we have, the stronger the chain is. And there are a lot of people who want to be validators but do not possess, whether it's the technical know-how or the hardware or whatever it is, they don't have the means to host their own node and do that full time and whatever, right? So Allnodes provides a very valuable service in where they will do that for them, okay? Allows more validators to come on, and, they help them out a lot. So the things that are, their whitelist or whatever, they have the keys to these validator nodes because there are things that they need to do for the validators that maybe some of these validators cannot do themselves that they rely on Allnodes to do. Very many validators that I have spoken to that have been involved in this for a while absolutely knew that about Allnodes. Absolutely knew it. Knew it from before the DPEG, that's the way that they ran business. But because of the longevity of Allnodes, because of the track record of sticking up for the community, of just being exemplary in their business practices, right? Never ever been anything that suggested that maybe they're siphoning money from this or that, or maybe they might use their power to vote for the validator nodes there's never been anything like that. And so a lot of people have chosen to go with them because of the reputation, right? We constantly in life have to make risk assessments, right? For decisions that we make on a daily basis, okay? Do we put our kids on the bus and send them to school, right? There's risk there, right? We make a risk assessment. What is the longevity of this bus company? What is their track record, right? Is it safe to put our kids on the bus to go to school? When I give, and I've used these examples before, I know, right? When I give the bank teller my code to get into my bank account, right? I can't see what they're typing on their computer. I do a risk assessment. I say that this bank is federally insured. That means the feds have said that they are safe and they have insured them, right? The bank has been around for a long time, never has any track record of stealing anybody's money or any reports of anything like that, right? So when I give that bank teller my code and let them get into my account and ask them to transfer some money for me or whatever, they could be sending $50 off over here, $100 off over there. They could be doing that. They could be a teller that's doing that amongst who knows how many accounts, right? You might not even notice it. Maybe they're moving such little money that you're not even noticing it, right? Those kind of things could happen. That's the risk that I take That's the risk assessment I have to make when I put my money in that bank and say, I trust these guys, right? When I go out and buy Hamburg to make burgers at night for my family, I have to make a risk assessment, right? Uh, the examples can go on and on and on of the things that could go wrong, the things that could happen, right? There are people in charge of things that we do not have control of, and we decide for ourselves whether or not we want to trust them, okay? Do we trust iPhone and Android and all that when we put in our credit card information to make a purchase online, right? When we slide our card into the reader at the grocery store, right? You know, we've all heard of all these things that have happened where people have kind of gotten screwed, right? But does it happen that often? Not really, right? Comparatively to how much we actually trust them. So these are risk assessments we have to make. It's the same thing here with Allnodes as far as I'm concerned. If they had more than a third of the voting power, could they do those things? Yep, they could, right? People still use them as a node hosting service or delegate with them altogether because of their track record, because you've done an internal risk assessment and said, no, we trust these guys. And, you know, yeah, not your keys, not your crypto, but also not your crypto, not your business, right? If it's my crypto and I decide that I want to delegate to Allnodes, or if I want to delegate to someone who uses Allnodes as a hosting service, that's up to me, right? It's up to the validator to choose them and not do it a different way. These are the decisions that we make, okay? On that, right? The article goes on to talk about how, and I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it goes on to talk about how, you know, there's really no way to tell exactly how much voting power they hold, right? And I think wield is the word that's used here, right? And I'll get to that in a second. There's no way to tell unless everyone who uses them as a hosting service was to come forward and let everybody know that that's the fact, right? And I agree with that, right? I feel like anyone who uses Allnodes as a hosting service, I feel that you should disclose it. I think it should be disclosed. Now, should we make people disclose it? Should we put out a governance proposal that says if you use a hosting service, you have to disclose it? We could do that. How exactly you enforce that, I don't know. You know what I mean? What would be the penalties if we passed it but people still didn't do it? I don't know, right? I'm not sure how that works. But I think that people should just volunteer that information. Why wouldn't you volunteer that information? If you're concerned that because of all this kerfuffle, right, that people might undelegate from you, well, just look at Allnodes themselves. Since all this has happened over the past few weeks, how many people have actually said, oh, I'm getting out of there, I'm undelegating, right? Not a lot. Maybe some have because of the efforts that Allnodes has made themselves, raising their commissions or whatever else, and said, you know, listen, yeah, go and delegate with somebody else. That's fine, right? Maybe some have done it because of that, but I don't think a lot of people have just abandoned ship. And so if you let people know that you use Allnodes as a hosting service, I don't know, you know, listen, maybe some people would leave. But maybe some people would say, you know what, I appreciate the transparency and the honesty and you coming forward and I'm going to delegate with you. It could happen that way too, right? I don't know. Anyway, so they talk about this Marko Vericevic, I guess is how you pronounce it. Cosmos top core developer says that for a third party, especially one that claims to be non-custodial, to wield such control over customer information is highly irregular. Understand and note, there are no quotes here. This is the interpretation of the author as to what Marko was actually saying, right? The next paragraph has something in quotes, and you can say that that's something that was directly said by Marko. In almost all scenarios, always, the customer, at the bare minimum, has the operator key, which controls the funds. End quote. Barkovich, I'm not sure, told Decrypt, quotes, in this scenario, both keys are owned by Allnodes, so it is custodial, end quote. Now, again, there's another situation where we didn't hear the whole conversation. We're not privy to everything. We don't know what came before that, what came after that. It's a little snippet taken out and fit into right after where they tell you they use such word as to wield such control over customer information. Do you see the imagery that's trying to be purported here? And then to use those quotes, those little snippets right after that, do you see what's trying to be portrayed to you, right? Do you see it the way I see it? That's how I see it. I don't know if you see it that way. You might see it a different way, and that's fine. Anyway, go on and read the whole rest of this thing. It goes on and on. But again, there is absolutely nothing here that is new. Nothing new at all. So, nothing burger, is that still a word that we can use or a phrase that we can use? I don't really see the big deal in this article. It's just a summation of everything that we already know. And if you want to go and read it, I think that you should go and read it. Do your due diligence, take in all the information you possibly can, but read it with an open mind. And read it understanding that there could potentially be an agenda here. People draw lines. And, this is a line, I think, maybe that's been drawn by this particular author of this article for whatever reason. All right. But I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna leave you at that because this is probably longer than I intended it to be, as always. If you could, for me on the way out, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you want to subscribe to the channel, please feel free to do so. I'm like 10 subscribers away from 2,000. So close, right? Anyway, all right. So I will talk to y'all about some other stuff later. Ciao.